The endgame. No, not that endgame. I'm talking about a chess endgame. In this sport of 64 squares, see what I did there? There's no more important part of the game than the endgame. Even though half of you probably don't even make it that far. You see, endgame is like the breakfast of chess. And just like y'all keep skipping the most important meal of the day, you're also neglecting to study your endgames. Grandmasters like Hikaru Nakamura or Magnus Carlsen or Daniel Naroditsky are able to win seemingly hopeless games simply due to their immense endgame knowledge and skill. And today, I'll teach you their secrets. Let's get into it. One of the most basic, but arguably one of the most important ideas we can learn in the endgame is the idea of opposition. Kings in chess are kind of like the dudes at the party that they are always talking shit, saying they're gonna fight, but then by the end of the night, they're both going home alone. Nothing happened. It was all passive aggressiveness. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that they can never touch. They can only come close to each other. So why is this important? Well, this concept's important because it means that we can restrict the other king's squares and where he can go. So let's take this position, for example. We move our king up here. This is going to restrict this black king's movement. He can't move upwards. And so this concept, realizing that we can restrict the other king's movement, we can use this concept to our advantage to attack pawns for the opponent and prevent our opponent from attacking our pawns and getting into our position. Here, white really wants to promote this pawn. The way white wins is getting this pawn all the way down the board, and promoting to a queen. What we need to do is somehow be able to push this pawn without the black king basically capturing it. And the key to that is using the concept of opposition. And so, because it's black's move here, black has to go somewhere, and they can't go on these 3 squares in front of the king. So black is forced to pick something. So he can go to the left. If he goes to the left, we simply just go to the right. If he tries to come back down, we just push our pawn. It's check. He's forced to go somewhere. We stay in opposition with him. And here we can just push the pawn, and he's gonna be forced to go back here. We grab opposition again, and again, king's forced to make a decision here. So we move our king to the side. Whichever side he goes to, we want to go to the opposite side. And then once that happens, once we get to the second to last rank, it's basically like rolling the red carpet out for the pawn. So there's no way for the king to stop promotion. We simply just push the pawn to promotion. There's nothing you can do to stop it. And we queen, and we win the game. The next in-game concept we really need to know is the rule of the square. So have you ever wondered how title players can just calculate things seemingly instantly in the in-game? Like, how do they know how, just so quickly, how the king can stop a pawn, or, you know, how many steps it's going to take for a pawn to promote? Well, the way that they know how to do that so quickly is by the rule of the square. With this trick, we can simply see whether a king is in time to stop a pawn from promoting, or if the pawn will make it to the end of the board. We simply count the amount of squares that the pawn has left to go up the board. So let's take this h4 pawn, for example. He's got to go 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 moves to promote. And then let's count to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you know, if you go up the board, that obviously makes a square. And the way the rule of square works is if this king is inside the square, then he can stop the pawn. If we try to push this pawn here, this black king can catch it. And so that doesn't work. So if the king's outside the square, that means he can't stop the pawn. So let's take the a pawn instead, for example. This one's easy to tell, but this is just an example of how the rule of square work. It's 2 squares away from promoting, and this black king, if you notice, we do the rule of the square again. This black king is not inside the square, so if we simply push our pawn, then he's not going to be able to stop us from promoting, and we're just going to win the game. So here, simply just push, and yeah, we just promote to a queen, we win the game. Simple as that. I mean, that's super simple, but it can really help you win more games, especially in time crunches. You don't have to calculate as much, you know, in those blitz games, those bullet games, and it can really help you win more games in that way. So now we're going to move on to the third tip. This third idea is the idea of pawn breakthroughs, and learning this has probably increased my elo alone by at least 100 points. So what's the end goal of endgames? We want to promote our pawn to a queen, and how do we do that? We got to make a pass pawn, right? And how do we make a pass pawn? we do that through pawn breakthroughs. So this first example of a pawn breakthrough is the simplest one, and so it's the easiest to understand, but it's also important to know because you're going to see this pop up maybe in a more complex breakthrough, but many breakthroughs are based on this simple original one. So here, this black G pawn is sort of restricting our G pawn, but all we have to do is push our H pawn here. So we break through and get this pass pawn by pushing this H pawn to H4. And by doing that here, if the black pawn does nothing and we just push and we promote anyways. So he's got to take or do something, and there's nothing he can really do because he takes, we get this pass pawn anyways, and we're just going to promote and win the game. So look out for those things in your games, guys. So I want to keep this video brief, so I'm just going to show one more example of the pawn breakthroughs, but this one is actually really cool, and it's also important to know because if you ever come across a situation, I'm sure maybe you've seen in the past, maybe you haven't, but it's kind of hard to tell what to do at first if you don't know what you're doing. First, we actually start with the middle pawn, and we're going to push it up. And here, black's got to make a decision. You know, if he doesn't do anything, we're just going to take one of his pawns, either the F pawn or the H pawn, and we're just going to promote. So he's got to do something, and whichever one he takes with, what we're going to do here is simply we can just push, whichever one he takes with, we push the other one. So the right pawn takes, we push the left pawn. And here, black is in a dilemma. If he takes our F pawn, he takes the left pawn, then we simply push the H pawn, because now that the G pawn has taken the F pawn, it's abandoned its guard of that file, and now that H pawn becomes passed. So he can't do that, but the thing is, if he takes our other pawn, then we also can just take his G pawn. So whichever way he goes, whatever he does, he's screwed, basically. And knowing this can win you games that maybe you wouldn't have before because you didn't know this concept. So here, you know, let's just say he plays this, we just push, you know, I don't know, push all the way up the board, we win the game. Of course, this is very simplified, and there's obviously many more things to think about during the end game. Maybe I'll make a video about them in the future at some point. But applying and combining these ideas is just going to immensely improve your chess. You're going to win more end games in the turn. You're going to win more games. You're going to increase your elo. So yeah, that's about it. Subscribe if you're new. Leave a like and comment. I'd love to hear what you guys think. And peace.